regarding the EU Parliament election,
Yeah,
I have to say, I just find out that Claire Daly lost it. I
yeah.
thought the people in Europe that they are anti-establishment, they are pro-peace, etc. But how come Claire Daly lost the election?
I can tell you straight away because I was following that election very closely. It's the old story of political technology. Of course, she's fighting this election as a member of the anti-war socialist left.
Yeah.
So, in order to reduce a vote, you put up three other candidates who also claim that they represent the anti-war socialist left, and they take
Okay.
votes away from her,
All right.
and that pushes her vote total down, and somebody else comes in. It's it's happened. It happens all the time, and it's simply another example of how politics are manipulated increasingly in Europe today. I'm very, very sorry it happened, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, she's a big hero of mine, and
Yeah.
and the-
You
and
wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that following the media in Ireland. They barely talk about her at all.
uh, okay. And then her colleague Mike Wallace, he hang on there, right? He had
Yeah.
some struggle there too, but he's
Yes.
still there, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
He is still there, but I'm very, very sorry about Claire
Mm,
Daly not winning. I should say I know her slightly, and I gave her my own personal endorsement. I did an
uh-huh.
interview with her before the election. I very, very much wanted her to win, and I'm very sorry that she didn't.
Yeah.
But Dublin is a difficult place because, of course, it's the capital, so it's easier for the establishment to control what goes on in its capital than it is in the regions, even in a country like Ireland.
Mm.
And Mick Wallace, he represents a place called Wexford, which was
Oh,
a town that fought very, very strongly against the English, and where, for that reason, there's a very strong anti imperialist tradition. Dublin is a more complicated place.
uh-huh. Okay. And also I find that Claire Daly and then in the meantime, in the US, I don't know if you know like some um alternative media personalities like a Brianna Joy Gray on the Hill. She got fired right after
Yeah,
they fired Katie Harbour.
yeah,
And Thomas Massey has been the reason I think Tucker Carlson interviewed him is because he was experiencing a tremendous attack from APAC during the
yeah,
primary.
yeah,
And then of course the German AfD they won big, but my I have a person, a friend who's also a self-media person based in Germany. And I had a conversation with him. He said that he believed the AfD could have won even more votes
yeah,
if not for this relentless mainstream attack and
yeah,
smear, etc.
yeah,
I find all these people have something in common is that they are honest, and also they are kind of like a non-interventionalist, right?
yeah.
They very much want to protect their own country, resources go to their own places, not to go over the place or around the world to interfere, to stir troubles. Don't you think that they kind of like they all have, if you're doing that, you will be attacked? Is that?
That is exactly correct. I mean, that is exactly what has happened. The IFD, as you correctly say, has been the subject of relentless attacks and abuse. I've just described what happened to Claire Daly.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I mean, we have the one thing that the Western political class knows how to do is it is how to maintain control, and they have the Twitter mobs that they unleash on people. They have the pressure points they exert on them. They make up fantastic and ridiculous stories. We see the lawfare going on in the United States. We see the relentless pressure that people come under, and it's you know it's very difficult to withstand, and it's frightening. And of course, a few weeks ago, we had an assassination attempt on
Yeah.
the Prime Minister of Slovakia, who, of course, also spoke out against all of this. So all of this goes on all the time, and it does have an effect. And by the way, I completely agree with what your friend in Germany said. If things had been done differently, if this had been a properly conducted campaign, the AfD would have got around 21, 22% of the vote, not 16.
Yeah. yeah, he's saying that they're attacking and smearing as
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
they portray it as the far right, and now everybody is a far right, right? As long
yes,
as you don't want to interfere into other country, get yourself
yes.
into war, then you're far right,
Yes,
right?
you're far right. You're far right. If you are sympathetic to China, by the way, which is of course a socialist country, you're also far right.
Far
Just
right,
saying.
yeah. Yeah, but you simply have to be 100% loyal to the
Absolutely,
establishment agenda,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Otherwise, okay. Uh, Before I let you go, what happened to the British film industry? So, I w- well, because here's the thing. You see, my mother, both my parents are big fan of the British movies,
Mm,
and they also like Russian movies as well.
mm,
But recently there were some articles about Hollywood is in trouble, but also also saw that there's a lot of problem with the British movie, which is supposed to be a big industry. And
yeah.
like my mother, I mean, I always think a British movie has audience because
Mm,
my mother likes British movie more than Hollywood. So
mm.
what happened?
Well, it's always the problem of, again, resources. I mean, they can't match the resources in Hollywood. But there is one fundamental problem, which is, by the way, a long-standing one, but it's got much, much worse in recent years, which is that the Hollywood studios in Britain itself control the cinemas and the distribution chains. And that means that, and a British made film, which is entirely British, has far more difficulty getting distribution than an American film does.
Mm.
The person who you need to speak to about all of this is my brother, by the way, who used to work for the script writers. He was the secretary of the Script Writers Guild of Great Britain, the people who actually write the film scores. And this is something that they have had to face over, well, for as long as anyone can remember. Now, what used to work to some extent to protect the British film industry is that it had government backing. The British
Okay.
government, as part of its policy of supporting the arts, and film is part of the arts, used to provide some degree of support for the film industry. So,
Hmm.
through tax breaks, through help with distribution, through rewards and prizes, and all of that. And your mother is absolutely right. Britain could produce amazing films,
Yeah.
and of course, it has a tremendous tradition of theatre and acting, which carries over into films, and got a huge literature behind it that can also be used to provide material for films. So Britain historically has been very good at creating and generating very, very fine films. But over the last 10 years, 14 years, government support has been gradually withdrawn, partly for ideological reasons, because
Hmm.
the current government, the one that's going to be voted out of power, believes that it's not proper for the government to support the arts in the same way. But also, and I'm going to say it straightforwardly, because the government in Britain is now so closely aligned to the United States that they're not going to support a domestic industry that is in competition, even if only in a small way, with Hollywood, which remains a major export for the United States. So that's the whole story. You see it right across the board, by the way. Rock music. Not that I'm particularly into rock music myself, but Britain was always a centre of this.
Yep.
Believe it or not, though I was never, as I say, interested in rock music, I used to work for a law firm many years ago, which specialised in rock music. So you got to
Okay.
know all the rock stars of the late 70s and early 80s at that time, all of them, Iron Maiden, Pink Floyd. I knew them all at one time. This is a long time ago. But again, um, the space for it has been shrinking
Hmm.
because the support for it from, say, the BBC,
Mm.
which used to exist, and British radio stations and all of that, it's been gradually limiting. It's been gradually falling away because, again, um, it seems astonishing to say this, but music industry is a major export item for the United States. You'd be astonished how important it is. And of course, the Americans also see it as a major mechanism for soft power, like the film industry.
Mhm.
So the Americans don't really want competitors, and they certainly don't want competitors like the British, who have a strong tradition competing directly with them. So that's basically the reason. That's why it's happened. It is very sad.
Yes.
By the way, it's feeding in because you can see that the standard of theatre life in Britain is declining as well. Because I said actors who were in, theatre used to go and work in the film industry.
Mhm.
That would then bring money back into the theatre. The theatres were very strong as a result, because this money flow, this churn,
Mhm.
isn't there any longer. Everything is starting to go down.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate, because British movie is very different from Hollywood movie. They're
Yeah,
they're not the same.
no, they're very
Yeah,
different. I mean, they
yeah,
also reflect the character,
mm,
the British character, which is profoundly different from the
yeah,
American. I mean, if you spend any time in Britain and know the British as I do, you know that they're not like the Americans at all.
mm,
So it's a different, distinctive Anglo English speaking culture to
mhm.
the American, but the political class in Britain wants to erase those differences, doesn't want to celebrate those differences. It's embarrassed by them. It wants to make Britain as American as possible. If it's the Labour Party, they want to align it more with the Democrats in the United States. If it's the Conservative Party, or even more so, Nigel Farage's Reform Party, they want to make Britain more like America from the right wing side, the Republican side. So it's very sad. And the irony is, of course, that even as the Americans are becoming more ruthless in suffocating
Mm.
their rivals within Europe, Hollywood itself is losing ground, because
Yes,
it's not producing films that are of any interest to anybody
yeah,
outside those who read comics. All American films now, as far as I can see, are about adaptations of comics, the big ones. And I mean, there's a massive film industry in China, huge.
yes, yeah,
And, not that the Americans let us see many of those films. And the Russian film industry, which was on its almost collapsed in the 90s, has now come back strongly because the government is supporting it. And the Russians are making very good films too.
yeah,
So
yeah,
Hollywood is losing ground.
yes, the reason I'm asking this is because I read it, Hollywood has not produced any good movies,
No.
for in recent memories. And also, there were some people on TikTok. She's an actor, and so she said, she came to Britain. I don't know where she's from, but she came to Britain 7 years ago. Even though it's not always easy for her to find roles, but she always get auditions. But the past year or so, there's not even audition, and it's
Yeah, well, there
across
you
the
go.
board. It's not just the acting, but also other people working in the industry seems like I have very tough time finding jobs. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't quite understand what happened to it, because like I said, in China there is a big audience of people like British movie,
Yes.
and we talk about the deficit, the trade deficit. This is one area Britain could have done something, right, to
Oh, yes.
to to
Oh,
make
yes.
money.
Absolutely. This is you're absolutely right. And the talent is potentially still there,
Hmm.
but of course it's been frittered away. Because, and by the way, I don't expect the Labour government that we're going to get to make it to change the situation there at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fundamentally not only not interested in this, but if they sense that the Americans disapprove, they won't go there. They won't do it. So there it is.
it seems like the British class, the ruling class, lost it. They don't know how to run their own country. Seems like just blindly
They
follow the U.S. That's what they
they
do.
don't know how to run their own country, and you're absolutely right about their feelings with the US. I mean, way back in the 16th century, we had a queen in England who was the queen, the ruler of the country, Queen Mary, who's
Hmm.
the sister of Elizabeth I, and she married the King of Spain, and she was absolutely in love with him and in love with Spain, and she subordinated the interests of England to the interests of Spain, which in those days was, of course, the big
Hmm.
superpower. And the English people said, the Queen loves another kingdom more than this. It's exactly the same now. The political class are exactly the same. They love another kingdom more than their own.
Okay, with that, and another very interesting conversation with you. So, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.